Like a moss-covered stone, I'm I'm very much kind of like on Team Green Lung now, for sure. Hi guys, welcome back, and hello if you are new. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day so far. So I'm pretty sure that one of the most anticipated records of this year, for sort of an emerging band, would probably have to be this Heathen Land by Green Lung. So this is the band's third album overall, and their first album on their new home of Nuclear Blast Records. So here's what I thought of this Heathen Land. Out of the caverns, unto the moon, through trials and passes we proceed. So if you may not be familiar with Green Lung, they are a relatively young band that were formed in London in 2017. And essentially kind of combine elements of doom, heavy metal, but then with elements of, I would say, UK folklore, and then a little bit of kind of 70s video nasty horror. So conceptually, the album looks at the sort of occult and I would say tradition more than anything in the UK. There's also a bit of paganism that I thought was in there. Whether or not they were going for that remains to be seen. Specifically, some of the topics that are explored are the Pendle witch trials on Mountain Throne. Then you've got the Pallinghurst Barrow on Song of the Stones. And there's even odes to hiking on the Ancient Ways and Blood on Satan's Claw, which is the Forest Church, one of the sort of, I would say, the big songs on this record. One of the ways that they sort of represent all of this stuff is with the Reader's Digest sort of style, and that's kind of what you can see on the album's artwork. And I think that's really kind of key to really nailing that sort of UK aesthetic. And I think especially Brits, when they see that, they're like, oh, I know exactly what they're going for and what this is all about. And just for a bit of context, Reader's Digest was kind of like, a sort of seminal book series, I guess, that, would have like stories or facts and things like that people would look into. So of course this album is steeped in atmosphere, and I think, it very much, tips its hat to the 70s. And the Ancient Ways and also the Forest Church have a great sort of organ section where basically, the guitar sort of trades off against the organ. And I think that really kind of heightens that sort of almost like John Lordy kind of keyboard style. There's also deliberately very, very lo-fi recordings, which kind of enhance that sort of like crackliness, the sort of like hard to hear documentaries that would be, sort of like spooky tales or like, folk horror sort of tales, and they would sort of bring you in, particularly with that sort of, it's kind of like 70s, 80s sort of sounds, on like synthesizer and things like that.
An older, stranger country. A country of lonely tors and desolate moors.
And with that, this sort of otherworldly sense very much kind of comes through on the record, and you can see it in kind of everything, those lo-fi recordings, the artwork. There's even a sort of, there's sort of like a weird ominous presence, I thought, on Oceans of Time, which is the album closer and probably the most prog song, I would say, on there. But it really reminded me of those sort of like 70s sci-fi kind of weird. Traditional values are also explored on here on Song of the Stones, which is very much kind of very folky. It has bits where there's this sort of flute, and it's introduced by this lone drum that you could imagine, people walking along moors, or, sort of like druids just kind of like marching to whatever, sort of pilgrimage they've taken, which I really thought was quite cool. All around me. But of course, Green Lung are a band, and, I think Riffs really are one of the foundations of the band, and particularly Mountain Throne, Hunters of the Sky are, very, very strong riffing efforts. However, though, it does have to be said that there's a lot of, I think, variety in their playing. You know, you've got tracks like Maxine, which is a bit more kind of upbeat. You've got Oceans of Time, which is more progressive. And One for Sorrow as well is more kind of like a doleful, mourning kind of vibe that very much kind of leans more into the doom metal aesthetic of the band. I have to say the guitar playing on here is really, really solid. You know, every track, I think, almost every track has a sort of centerpiece guitar solo, which is really cool. And I like the fact that it's a little bit more technical. It's kind of erring more on the sort of heavy metal side of things, but, you know, like, made me think of people like Glenn Tipton and things like that, you know, that level of technicality that maybe you wouldn't necessarily always associate with stoner and doom and things like that. Initially, though, I have to say, this album did kind of take a little bit of a while to get its hooks into me. I really, really sort of persevered with it, and I've listened to it for a long time now, and a lot. And it's definitely grown on me like a moss-covered stone. I'm very much kind of like on Team Green Lung now, for sure. I also really love the fact that there's a lot of sense of spirituality on this record. You know, you feel like, I don't know, there's something in those riffs, in the melodies and things like that, that really does kind of channel that feeling of, you know, being on Glastonbury tour and, you know, that sort of kind of vibe, or being at one with nature and, you know, in the forest and things like that. This Heathen land creates a universe which is entirely Green Lung's own. They combine elements of the traditional, spooky folklore, a bit of spirituality here, but all done through a modern lens. And I think really that this Heathen land is going to be one of the breakout albums of 2023, for sure. So for that reason, I'm going to give this album an 8.5 out of 10. So I hope you guys enjoyed this album review. Let me know what you think in the comments underneath me. And I will see you guys very, very soon for another album review. Oh, and if you did enjoy this, please do hit that like and subscribe button. And send it over to any sort of Lungling fans that you might know who would get a kick out of it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Take care.